Snowbird is a 2,500-acre destination ski resort approximately 45 minutes from Salt Lake City, Utah. Known for the amazing snow quality, challenging terrain, and proximity to Salt Lake, Snowbird may be an appealing package on paper. In this review, we'll discuss the pros and the cons of visiting Snowbird for your next vacation. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing to be notified of new ski and bike videos. Whenever I review a ski resort, I score the destination in 10 categories from 0 to 10, adding to a maximum score of 100. A 10 out of 10 means the resort's the best you can find, which is a rare achievement. A 5 out of 10 is average across destinations, and a 1 out of 10 means the resort needs major improvements. This review is based off 4 separate week-long trips over 2 years to the Cottonwoods resorts, with a total of 8 days spent at Snowbird. Let's jump right in with the ease of access. Similar to the review I made of Alta Ski Area last year, Snowbird is pretty easy to access 90% of the time. The resort is just 45 minutes east of Salt Lake City up Little Cottonwood Canyon. Anybody from pretty much any location can fly into Salt Lake and stay in the city for a trip. Of all Utah resorts, the Cottonwoods get significantly more snow than the rest, seeing snow totals that exceed places like Park City by at least 100 inches every season. Although Snowbird is incredibly easy to access 90% of the time, the Canyon Drive is one of the most avalanche-prone areas in the world. When significant snowfall hits, the road can turn into a mess, enhanced by the narrow one-lane road and influx of traffic to 2 destination resorts. You can follow the Utah Department of Transportation's Cottonwoods Instagram page or website for conditions updates in the canyon. On our second trip, we had horrible experiences accessing the resort. After snowfall, the canyon was closed for mitigation, and we waited in a line of cars over 7 miles long to reach the mouth of the canyon. Coming back later in the trip, traffic took us over an hour and a half to reach the base of the canyon. Other than the short section of dangerous road, booking a trip here is very simple due to the ease of access. Snowbird earns a 6 out of 10 in this category for being a simple resort to get to most of the time, but being one of the worst resorts to access during a storm cycle. I should also mention my experience with Alta has changed since visiting more recently. I would also bump Alta's score down to a 6 out of 10, so if you watch that review, take ease of access with a grain of salt. Similar to Alta, the proximity to Salt Lake City means you'll have a lot of options with lodging that you look for. On the mountain though, lodging is limited and extremely pricey. Each trip I make to Utah, I stay at the Embassy Suites located in South Jordan. Snowbird is a quick 26-minute drive from the hotel, well, most of the time, along with many other lodging options in Sandy, Cottonwood Heights, and Jordan. If you stay on the mountain, options are limited to the Cliff Lodge and hotels in the town of Alta, such as the Rustler and Snowpine Lodges. The contrast between endless lodging selections in the city, but essentially nothing in the canyon, is greater than pretty much any other resort. While the Cliff Lodge is large, you'll be paying for it. I'll give Snowbird a 6 out of 10 in lodging for having options close to Salt Lake City, but limited hotel options on site. The food at Snowbird was greater quality than I had expected. At the resort, you can experience a variety of foods from 16 different places. We've eaten at the summit of Hidden Peak, the Midgad restaurant, and the Forklift. All restaurants had above average food options with several cuisine options. Not only does Snowbird have quick food such as the Subi Shack and Gadzooks, but they also have sit-down dining. This is super nice, not only because Snowbird's a tough mountain where skiers need breaks, but also because it provides a true restaurant experience. Snowbird will earn an 8 for having many options that suit all types of skiers and snowboarders, and for the unlimited options near the endless hotels in Salt Lake. To be considered a destination ski resort, Snowbird needs a high-speed lift system that can manage sufficient crowds and boasts redundancies that prevent choke points in the resort. Let me start by saying that Snowbird's lift system has drastically improved in the past 10 years. Coming from mostly slow fixed grip doubles, the resort now has a modern, mostly intuitive setup. The resort can be divided into 3 sections, which are Gad Valley, Mineral Basin, and Peruvian Gulch. In Gad Valley, the lift setup makes complete sense, and there's no major issues for getting up the mountain. Within Mineral Basin, Snowbird has 2 lifts. The Mineral Basin Express is one of the biggest choke points on the mountain, serving the only access out of Snowbird's backside. A capacity upgrade is needed here, but with limited, and I mean extremely limited space on the ridge, this expansion will for sure be difficult. The Peruvian Gulch Zone also has some problems. As much as Snowbird advertises the tram, it's far from the most effective method to get around the mountain. The tram often has really long lines and requires taking off skis and walking through a building. Taking the Peruvian Express isn't exactly a perfect alternative because the lift doesn't go all the way up the ridge. Visitors must take the unique Peruvian tunnel to get to the backside and ride the Mineral Basin Express to the top, adding to that lift's crowds. Beginner terrain is all serviced by slow doubles that make lapping this terrain difficult. Still, the resort will earn a 7 in this category. While the mountain has high-speed lifts run at full speed across most areas, the setup could be more efficiently designed and beginner terrain service could use a big upgrade. The next 2 categories will dive into the runs at Snowbird, the main component of a visit for many people. Both the quality and variety are vastly different than those at Alta, which may shift visits for some people. Starting with the quality, Snowbird has an interesting combination. Snowbird has some of the best snow in the world. The resort often sees over 500 inches of the greatest snow on Earth, which is easy to move through even when deep. Although neighboring Alta receives more snow that's lighter and better preserved, the snow is a major strong point at this resort. Half of Snowbird's terrain faces north, meaning good snow preservation, with the exception of Mineral Basin, which sees snow quality decrease pretty quickly. However, the snow isn't the only part of quality of runs. Snowbird has excellent advanced and expert runs, but intermediate runs are a little bit of a disappointment. Most blue runs on the front side are narrow traverses that are deceivingly difficult in low visibility and often get crowded. The blue runs in Mineral Basin are super fun, but face sun exposure and therefore face snow preservation issues. However, Snowbird has a massive vertical drop of over 3,000 feet, making for some crazy long continuous runs. Snowbird will earn an 8 out of 10 for having near perfect snow and a long vertical drop, but struggling with fun intermediate terrain. Let's talk about terrain diversity. Snowbird is far from a well-rounded resort, but they certainly have unique terrain across the mountain. Beginner terrain at Snowbird is extremely limited. The Baby Thunder Lift services some greens, but the runs are super short and not ideal for skiers learning. Midgad also has some green runs, but they're short and crowded. For intermediates, Snowbird has more options, but the runs are hit or miss. The Mineral Basin backside has some long, wide-open blue runs that weave in and out of trees. The runs typically are groomed, and the Baldy Pot is a great environment for intermediates. On the front side, blue runs are limited to crowded traverses. Due to the mountain's steep topography, intermediate runs on the front side are typically more difficult than at other resorts. With the exception of a few runs such as Big Emma and Bananas, Snowbird isn't ideal for the intermediate skier. For advanced and expert visitors, Snowbird is incredible. Advanced but not expert skiers will find an abundance of black runs. Some of my favorites include Regulator Johnson on the front side, Gadzooks, and the Path to Paradise runs in Mineral Basin. Advanced runs are mostly ungroomed, but Snowbird provides Regulator Johnson and some other runs with grooming. Experts will feel right at home at Snowbird.
Hold up. Yeah, I think we're fine. It's sketchy though. Yeah, it's really gnarly. Like right there. That's a route. 3, 2, 1.
The mountain has so much expert terrain that it's pretty much impossible to narrow down to any favorites. I've had a really fun time on the Get Serious Chutes, Cirque Traverse, and West Baldy. The Cirque Traverse is easily the most iconic set of runs at Snowbird. Expert runs span both sides of the ridge and are steep chutes. For expert skiers, the Cirque is heaven. Not only does Snowbird have these runs, but they also have an abundance of bowl terrain, glades, and off-piste runs. Snowbird does have a terrain park, but it's a little disappointing. Visitors come to Snowbird for the difficult and true mountain experience though, not the park. The resort will earn a 7 out of 10 for having unique topography that allows for bowls, trees, and chutes, but lacking some of the more gentle terrain. A category I think is important is the mountain layout. I added this rating due to the importance of navigation or finding your way around. Snowbird's layout isn't bad, but it certainly has some flaws. Let me start by saying that the resort is fairly easy to navigate between mountain areas with a few exceptions. Snowbird is a mountain that gains its acreage from height, not width. Since the vertical drop is so large, getting between mountain areas typically won't require an hour-long excursion that's common in places like Deer Valley or Park City. While this is nice, the details of the layout aren't great. Snowbird is divided by a ridge, which houses the runs on the expert Cirque Traverse. You can get off the Peruvian chair and it runs directly to Gad Valley without taking the tram or connecting through Mineral Basin. This can be challenging and may require waiting in long lines. Gad Valley and Mineral Basin are fairly easy to navigate and don't pose any major problems. Getting from Gad Valley to Peruvian Gulch is much easier, but visitors must take the wheelbeer chair to avoid a hike. The lift is short, but riding the slow chair over and over can get very repetitive. Snowbird's mountain layout earns a 6 out of 10 for being a tall mountain with large vertical drop, but lacking wide, consistent blue runs and a space-constricted area at the peak, which can cause difficulty for navigation between valleys. Next is the resort's pricing. At Snowbird, lift tickets range from $134 to $167 on average, but can reach higher at peak times. For the incredible snow quality and challenging terrain, this price is fair and undercuts many competing resorts. Places like Deer Valley and Park City have lift tickets that sell for at least $200, and I would argue Snowbird offers a more appealing package with more snow and more difficult terrain. However, the hotels on the mountain have some of the highest pricing I've ever seen. The Cliff Lodge in the winter is at least $700 a night for a base level room and easily exceeds $1,000 during peak times. Food is priced appropriately for a ski resort, but is still fairly high compared to off-mountain food. The pricing at Snowbird will earn a 6 out of 10 for being mostly above average with food and lift tickets, but having outrageous pricing for hotels. Let's look at the scenery at Snowbird. Our trips were mostly snowy, but the scenery is very similar to Alta. From 11,000 feet up, you can look deep into Little Cottonwood Canyon with stunning mountains on both sides. On a clear day, you can see into Salt Lake City as well. The views from Mineral Basin are amazing, and you can see mountain ranges with sharp peaks and lots of snow. When the wind speeds are high, the snow blows off these peaks, creating a crazy atmosphere that feels like you're in a movie. Snowbird will easily earn a 10 out of 10 for having some of the best views of any resort in the world. The final category is logistics, which are small details of the resort that contribute to the overall experience. Starting with parking, Snowbird doesn't require reservations and parking can fill up fast. However, the resort offers parking on the side of the highway, at the Peruvian base, and at Gad Valley. Snowbird also heavily enforces carpool, offering giveaways and a lot close to Snowbird Center. The staff were mostly friendly and were stoked on the POW Day just as much as we were. The resort offers complimentary mountain tours, which we unfortunately didn't have time to try. Snowbird doesn't offer many off-mountain activities, but since the resort is so close to Salt Lake, one can find interesting activities in the city. The resort itself offers scenic tram rides, backcountry skiing through Powderbird, or personal hiking, and a few other options. However, wind can be a major problem. Most storm days, the tram and upper lifts end up closing early due to high winds. It is a tall mountain and therefore not surprising that wind has severe impacts on conditions. The Bird is also affiliated with Alta on the Icon Pass, which means visitors may not have to pay for an additional ticket. Crowds at Snowbird can be frustrating, especially at Mineral Basin and the tram on weekends. Still, crowds aren't nearly as bad as places like, Park City, or Vail, or Whistler, or, well, there's a lot more. Snowbird's snow is preserved fairly well too, turning to chalk days after a storm. Chalk at Snowbird is easy to ski and is unique to the 4 Cottonwood resorts. Finally, the website. Snowbird provides a website that's mostly straightforward with daily mountain reports and trail status. They also update you on road status and lift status when conditions get gnarly. However, webcams are supposed to be live but seem to misload several times. Overall, Snowbird will earn a 7 for logistics, for having mostly above average details, being on the Icon Pass, and having a functional parking system and website. Snowbird's overall mountain score adds up to be a 71 out of 100. This means the mountain is above average and proves to be a great destination resort. Before we wrap up, I know a lot of people want to compare this resort to neighboring Alta, so let's talk about it a bit. In my Alta ski resort review, the mountain scored a little bit higher due to less crowding, more diverse terrain, and great logistics. The details between the two could be worth an entire video, which we'll save for later. However, I would recommend Alta over Snowbird for beginners, intermediates, and advanced skiers. When it comes to experts, the resorts are close, but Snowbird may be the slightly better pick. Overall, the resort's a great destination that's definitely catered towards experienced skiers, and I would recommend visiting on your next ski trip. That wraps up today's review, and thanks for watching. I'll see you all next time.